Let's give some takeaways from yesterday's Spurs-Hawks loss. Is Blake Wesley improving, and is the answer to the point guard spot already on the roster?
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Hot Rod.
And I'm RC from San Antonio Spurs.
And you're listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for KENS 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. And you guys are the everydayers. We appreciate you stopping here on Locked On Spurs each and every day. Free and available where we get podcasts, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, KENS 5 Plus app. The list goes on and on. We appreciate you stopping by. Hey, Spurs-Hawks, we're going to look back at yesterday's game, some takeaways from that game. It was a loss, but nevertheless, there were some. We'll get into that in just a few seconds. Also, is Blake Wesley improving? We're going to be looking at how he's been looking on the court with the increased minutes, and is the answer to the point guard spot already on the roster long term? And his name is Tre Jones. We'll discuss that and more with our guest, Raul Dominguez of the AP Sports out here in San Antonio. He'll be joining us in just a few seconds. But about yesterday afternoon, the Spurs lost 109-99. Just in Atlanta. It was an L. Kind of mixed feelings about this game, but let's just dive into it. First takeaway is this team, reverted back to what we saw earlier in the season, not playing a complete 48 minutes. They were starting to turn the corner of late. You're getting some L's, but you're getting some wins as well. But they were playing at least competitively from beginning to end. Not this time. Spurs really came out flat. Got outscored in the first period 35-16. Got outscored in the second period 34-18. And it was just a bad deficit. I mean, it was 30-point blowout at one point. Again, takeaway number one is just this team still has yet to prove they can consistently put together 48 minutes, 4 periods of basketball. We'll see if that gets better. You give them a little break, probably not, because they should have been doing this from day one. But nevertheless, takeaway number one, again, the Spurs show they cannot play 48 minutes of basketball. Takeaway number two, Wembanyama. Yes, Wemby watch does it again. Had himself a great second half. Kind of was short and flat in the first half, but he finished with 26 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, multiple block shots, again, showing why he's important for the Spurs moving forward. What I liked about it, that he was showing a lot of aggressiveness going to the rim, dunking, trying to establish himself in the paint, making his presence known, and he did that on both ends of the floor. He was very key in that second half comeback. We'll talk about that in just a few seconds versus Atlanta, and I just hope that this is just, for the roster and moving forward and seasons ahead, that they understand he is the focal point to establish him from jump ball to the end of the period of the game. I know he's on a minutes restriction. I get that. But once he's lifted off, I hope the minutes restriction, that is, I hope they get him going every single second he's on that court. Atlanta really didn't have an answer for him. They try to body him. He spins around, dunks on him, and one. Blocking shots, we know he can do that. But overall, you liked another good outing for Wemby. Really big piece for the Spurs moving forward. The final takeaway is, the Spurs came to life in the second half. So, yes, as much as takeaway number one was about them not playing 4 periods of basketball, but at least the second half, they made it competitively. And they outscored the Hawks 33-18 in the third. Remember how the third used to be the doom and gloom period for the Spurs? This time it was what resurrected them into getting it a game. And then they outscored the Hawks 32-22. They finally came awake in that second half. It's just too little too late now. You do credit them. They didn't lay down and die. It was a blowout at half. I mean, it was not pretty. But for them to come out, play with more intensity, get more physical. We saw Blake Wesley from full court on defend Trey Jones, who was just cooking the Spurs in that first half. I believe he had like 24, 25 points in that first half. And then they really held him to single digits in the second half. So credit Blake Wesley, credit the Spurs, Keldon Johnson for being aggressive. I mean, they really made it a game. They came back, and you look at some of the stats here. They were connecting on threes late in the game. They were getting key rebounds, but the thing about it is just that it was just too little, too late. Some inexperience show. We saw Keldon with kind of a wild dash to the rim and out of bounds and offensive foul, and so you saw a lot of that stuff. Still showing their age, the youngest team in the NBA. Nevertheless, you look at the Spurs team. So kudos to them for making it competitive in the second half. Just they need to learn to do it for a full 48 minutes. So there is your quick takeaways from the Spurs lost to the Atlanta Hawks. Jeremy Sohan had 23 points and 8 rebounds. You had Champagnie with 15 points. And then you had Malachi Branham with 4 points in 10 minutes. And Tre Jones with 6 points and 11 assists. All in all, tough way to lose, 109-9, 10 points, but trust me, it was a lot worse than that. And it doesn't get any easier for the Spurs. Up next, they got the Boston Celtics in Boston. So good luck to the Spurs. Coming up next, we got Raul Dominguez of the AP Sports out here in San Antonio. We're going to be discussing Blake Wesley and if Tre Jones is established as the answer at point guard moving forward for this Spurs team. That's coming up next on Locked On Spurs.
Hey guys, this is Jason David Frank, the Green Ranger, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia. It's morphin' time.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get your way to being the best self you can be. Look, so around New Year's, you start obsessing about how you're going to change yourself, but instead of just expanding on what you're already doing right, maybe you want to organize that part of your space in your apartment or your house, or you want to tackle another task ahead of you. Maybe you want to use supplements in the morning. Maybe you want to actually eat breakfast. Whatever it is to improve yourself, this is where BetterHelp comes in. The therapy helps you find your strengths. You can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really, really stick. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Look, it's helpful in learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And this isn't just for those who experience major trauma. It is for them too, but it's for everybody. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you have made. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get yourself 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. I also want to talk to you about FanDuel. Look, the NFL playoffs are underway, but there's still time to get in on the action over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get themselves $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is easy to use. It's convenient, user-friendly. I have it. You should get it too. There's so many different ways you can bet, like live same-game parlays, find bets in the new Explorer tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. That's the best way to find popular parlays, and so much more. You want to visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn right now. Go there. Get on your favorite device, your mobile, your laptop, computer, whatever you need. Go get that app. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
This is Emily Swallow, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
And we're back right here on Locked On Spurs, now joined by my good friend. He is Raul Dominguez of AP Sports. Follow him on X at Dominguez5, and he's rocking the Manu Ginobili cap. Look at that, everybody. Gracias, Manu. Mm-hmm. That was at his retirement, right?
Yeah, it was. But they gave away, I think it was tissues and a ball cap.
Tissues, yeah, for the all crying. I remember that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think HEB sponsored that.
Yeah, they
something
did.
like that. Yeah,
I still have a bag of the tissues. So,
man, I wonder if anybody would be crazy enough to buy that off you.
I'm sure someone would.
Look, trust me, there's a lot of Manu fans, especially out in Argentina. I think Argentina fans would be like, "That's a piece of history right there."
I had a friend who had this cap, and he was telling me that night he went to a bar and somebody gave him like $40 for the cap. So,
I bet he was like, "Sure," he took it, huh? Oh yeah. Well, now with appreciation, so maybe it's worth maybe 80, maybe who knows. Yeah. But Raul's going to help me talk about a pair of point guards, Blake Wesley and Tre Jones. And we'll talk about Tre Jones in just a few minutes. We're going to start with Blake Wesley. And Raul, he's getting a lot more minutes. He's not being stashed away in Austin anymore. he's being relied upon now to back up Tre Jones. What are you seeing out of him of the games? Now, mind you, everybody, this is ahead of the Atlanta game, so keep that in mind. We'll do have his Atlanta numbers, so we'll throw that in there. But nevertheless, I like what I'm seeing, but I want to hear what you think. What are you liking out of Blake?
He's a guy that it's good and bad. He goes 100 miles per hour, which can be bad because sometimes he's a little out of control. But he's a guy that gives this tremendous effort. I mean, like I say, he's always 100%. He's a guy that even when he's maybe a little out of control, he's still able to make things happen. Defensively, he's out there, just running around, hustling, and a guy that can disrupt sometimes even inadvertently. Maybe he just gets in the way or just kind of throws people's rhythm off. But he's a very interesting prospect. You can tell that he's still kind of learning the game. Not so much just the NBA game, but the game period. But he is an intriguing prospect. I would love to see him get more time.
Yeah, me too. I had a chance to speak with him after the Spurs game against the Bulls, and he told me that one thing he focused on a lot playing with Austin is controlling his pace. So he's aware of that. He's aware that he goes about 1 billion miles an hour, and what he does like the fact that he's now able to take that mindset of being, be mindful of his pace with San Antonio. Now, he's still working on it, as we can tell. But one thing I do like, and again, we saw this in the Atlanta game yesterday, was he can hound people full court. I mean, they stuck him on Trey Young. I mean, Trey Young was cooking the Spurs in the first half, but in the second half, it was a different Trey Young. Blake Wesley had a lot to do with that, slowing him down. I think he held him in the second half to about single-digit scoring, that being Trey Young. So I definitely like the defensive prowess that he does bring. Even the national commentators during the game gave a shout out to Blake Wesley as saying a big reason why the Spurs were to erase a 30-point deficit versus Atlanta. So I'm definitely liking what I'm seeing out of the defensive end. Do you think he's a viable backup point? I mean, I know the Spurs don't really have a choice, but is he a viable backup for Tre Jones right now, or would you like to see them maybe default back to maybe a Malachi Branham?
I'd love to see him just to see what Blake can do. I mean, I realized that they had said that this season would be more about wins than more so than development. But at this point, with their record, I mean, why not go back a little bit to development? Just see what they got with Blake. I mean, I honestly think he's going to be a good NBA player. I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't know how good he can be, but I think he's a guy that's going to be around the NBA for a while. So why not give him a shot? Why not let him go in there and he's going to make mistakes. He's a young player. He played, I think, 1 year at Notre Dame. But, he's got, I know it's usually reserved for football, but you can't teach speed. In basketball, it's still critical. I mean, I love the fact that he knows about his pace, but I don't want him to slow down because I think that's one of the things that helps him is just sort of that breakaway speed and the quickness. And that's one thing about him defensively, like, sometimes a guy will make a move and they're able to get away from someone. He's quick enough to where he can recover defensively. He may foul, he may not be in the right spots, but he's always going to give it his all. And again, that's just a matter of his going 100 miles per hour all the time. So I would love to see them just, hey, let's see what we've got. Give him some minutes, some backup minutes. Honestly, I'm intrigued after what he did with Atlanta. I'm intrigued to see him maybe play with Wemby a little bit, see how they interact.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We're looking at what he did against Atlanta. Again, I like you focus on the defensive aspect of his game, but he finished with 3 points in 13 minutes. He did have 3 assists and 2 rebounds now, but ahead of that game versus Atlanta, in just January alone, Raul, 6 games played already. They're giving him the minutes, giving him about 14 minutes a game, 5 points per game through 6 games, not including the Atlanta game. And then 1.3 rebounds, 1.3 assists, about a steal a game. And you're looking at the shooting. It's not terrible, 61%. Now, I bring that up is because you look at what he did in the month of December. The Spurs threw him out there for 7 games. He shot atrocious, 36% from the field. You fast forward to this month, he's now at 61%. So good deal. And if there's any kind of nitpick I have with him is that 3-shot. He doesn't really default to it. If he can get that going, I think that'll help him. But you're seeing the marked improvement little by little.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say on the jumper, that's something that he definitely needs to work on. But I think with Blake, he's sort of still, again, trying to figure out his way into what works best for the NBA. Him driving to the basket, him playing, just sort of hustle defense. I think maybe he's kind of taking it one step at a time as far as his development. I would think that this offseason he's going to really work on a mid-range jumper. I think a mid-range jumper would be perfect for him, because hit the mid-range jumper or fake the mid-range jumper and then drive in for a little floater or something. But I think that's probably why his shot isn't there yet, because I don't think he's quite figured out what kind of offensive player he's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, and he's electric. We saw what he did against Chicago, with that big, massive dunk, got the crowd hyped and everything, so he's athletic, electric. He has all the tools there. He just needs more seasoning, and so far they're giving him that seasoning. We'll see what he makes of it. Now, before we go to the next topic here, but do you suspect that he might go back to Austin, or you think he's going to stay on the San Antonio roster from this point forward?
I think they're going to probably send him to Austin a few more times and to keep his confidence up. And Austin does an incredible job. Their G League. I mean, you look at DeJounte, Derek, Holden,
Tre Jones.
Tre Jones. All these guys that went down there, and Spurs are, and the Austin staff are doing it the right way. They're bringing these guys in and saying, hey, this is your chance to work on your game. This is your chance to work on kind of, what do you feel like you're going to need at the NBA level. And Derek went down there and he just turned himself into this great offensive player, and just a ton more confidence when he came back up. So with Blake, I think that they'll send him down, maybe not as often, but they will definitely send him down. They want him to get those, I'm sure, those starter minutes, those late game situation in those late game situations.
Sure. Yeah. No, not including the Atlanta game, but the 3 games ahead of yesterday's Hawks game, he was averaging about 11 minutes per game, giving you about 5 points per game, 1.3 assists, 1.3 rebounds, and a 2.0 assist. So, again, you're looking at small incremental improvement for Blake Wesley. We'll see how he does for the rest of the season. Coming up next, we're going to shift gears and talk about another point guard, Tre Jones. Now, everybody's been talking about the Spurs need a point guard. Well, what if the answer is already on the roster? Tre Jones has been starting the last few games, and he's making a world of difference. We're going to ask Raul his opinion on that topic coming up next on Locked On Spurs. Before we continue our conversation, I want to talk to you about Jase Medical. Look, I know we come to sports to escape some of the crazy realities of life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That's scary. So you can't imagine yourself and feeling more helpless. Let's just say your parents or your brother, your sister, niece, nephew, godson, whoever is your loved one, need medication. They can't get to it because of supply chain issues. That could keep them from life-saving medication. So thankfully, they'll be okay. You'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses such as UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infection. And that's just among a few lists of things that they really, really can help you with. Look, this stuff can happen to any of us. That's why Jase Medical is here. You want to visit jasemedical.com, complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. Go to Jase Medical right now. It's never been more important to be prepared for than today. Go to jasemedical.com. Use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. And we are back with Raul Dominguez of AP Sports. Follow him on X at Dominguez5. And also, just to follow him as well, to give him a shout out for the incredible poster that he gave me. Look at that, Raul. There it is.
Nice.
There it is. Prime is dunking on me. He's dunking on me with some energy there. I could definitely use that kind of energy in the morning to get my day going. Give me a nice Energon cube. I think that's from Ripped, right? Ripped.com.
Yeah.
That's where you got it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. So again, Raul, thank you for that. We are talking about the silver and black, and we're going to shift gears now to Tre Jones. Look, Raul, everybody's been talking about, point guard this, point guard that. Spurs need a point guard. But Tre Jones has been starting the last several games, including the game against the Hawks, and it's kind of been working. They improved better. They're winning third periods now ever since he's come on board. I've talked to Doug McDermott. He says that Tre Jones is an organizer on the court, that he keeps everything fluid and moving forward. Even for Zach Collins early in the season, I spoke to him, and when they inserted him into the lineup, Tre Jones that is, and he had nothing but smiles that Tre Jones is back. So the big question here, Raul, is why do the Spurs need to search for a point guard if they already got one who's making an impact?
I think initially they wanted that because of the way the league's kind of going, positionless league, and long, tall defenders. You look at Toronto before they traded OG, a lot of long, defenders that almost seemed like with Toronto, all their lineup was almost same height, same build. So I'm sure the Spurs wanted something similar. Jeremy experiment was great idea, but it just didn't work out.
It's putting it lightly.
Yeah, if it had worked, it would have been tremendous, but obviously, didn't quite work out. Didn't work out at all. But with Tre, I think I don't know if maybe it's because he's a little smaller. Maybe they thought we need a little bit more height defensively, but Victor makes up for a lot of either not deficiencies, but he makes up for any sort of lapses on defense, or he can with his height, and how many shots that he alters. So again, I'm not sure why Tre wasn't starting initially. Again, I think it was because they wanted to try that experiment, didn't work, and you put Tre in there, and Tre sort of calmed him down. Tre's such a great presence. He's a guy that he is a team guy. Even when he wasn't starting, he was still supporting the team. During one of the recent post games, somebody asked him about him not starting, and if about him doing well was sort of him showing hey, I should have been starting. He's like, no, I'm here to help the team, and so that kind of presence, that kind of attitude, reminds me of the Manu, Patty, Boris type of leaders, who were basically just, hey, I'm here to do whatever it takes for us to win. So having that type of player, that type of attitude in the starting lineup, after everything that they went through, I think is very calming. And he's showing that he is a true point guard, a true leader for this team.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I've been a Tre Jones fans for quite some time, since he made it to get to the Spurs. And I saw what the Spurs see in him, that general, that floor general. But, he's really added a lot to his game, and he's now become an offensive threat. He had 30 points in a career high versus Chicago in a loss. But nevertheless, I like the intangibles. During that Chicago game, I saw him directing traffic. I saw him pointing to the court, I believe it was to Sohan, you want to get right here, pointing down forcefully, being very communicative wherever he was, even if it was out the ball, guiding everybody. He very humble, as you mentioned that, you highlighted it, about him coming off the bench. But to me, it's just I get positionless basketball. I understand that. But for this situation, though, I think the Spurs are going to be okay. I think Tre Jones, he has familiarity with the squad. He has the chemistry with them. He's getting familiar with Wemby. Why not just keep with him for the foreseeable future in the rebuild? I mean, obviously, if a star point guard, quality point guard comes aboard, like a veteran like Mike Conley or Drew Holiday, I get why the Spurs would do it, because they need that veteran presence. But technically, Tre Jones is a veteran by NBA definition. He's not a rookie. He's not a sophomore anymore. Am I crazy here, Raul? I mean, it feels like the Spurs have their point guard already on the roster.
Yeah, no, I mean, very valid points. And I was also going to say, you're mentioning far the veteran. If there's some great young point guards in the upcoming draft, So if they were to get one of them, possibly or definitely go that way. But for right now, I think he adds us a calming. He gives them a calming presence. He's able to, again, like you're saying, tell them exactly where they're supposed to go, add some stability, and I think Wemby needs that right now. I think Wemby needs someone to kind of direct the floor, and it seemed like at times when they had that tall lineup, it didn't seem like no one was really sure who was supposed to be where, or who's supposed to be doing what. Trey's letting them know, hey, you got to be here, you got to be there, and he's setting up the offense, the way that Pop wants it set up.
Now, in the loss versus the Hawks yesterday, he had a very impressive stat line from the assist department. He had 12 assists on the night or the day. It was afternoon game. So, he's facilitating. The numbers are there as well. Now, ahead of that game versus Atlanta, you look at his game log. We mentioned the 30-point outing versus Chicago, but he had 9 rebounds in that game as well as 4 assists. And minimal turnovers, just 1. And that's what I really like. His assist to turnover ratio is one of the better ones in the NBA. He had a stretch of games from January 7th all the way through, Raul, I'm not kidding you, to November. Hold on. He had a stretch of games where he just had like no turnovers, I believe, or minimal turnover, like 1. Like the most he's had so far. The last bad turnover game was December 21 at Chicago with 5 turnovers. But after that game, 1 turnover versus Dallas, 0, 1, 3 versus Portland, 0. He just really values the ball. And that's something the Spurs have been really improving upon in this stretch of games. Now, they tied the turnover department with Atlanta. I think they both had 16. But before that, they had 8 turnovers in one game, 5 turnovers in one game. And I think that has a lot to do with Tre Jones on the back of the lineup. So even if you look at his last, before the Hawks game, so the last game he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. In that 5-game span ahead of the Hawks game, 4 of those games were in double figure scoring, and then the Spurs got 2 W's out of that. So I just think that let him prove himself the rest of the season. I know the trade deadline's coming up. I get that. Then they got the waiver wire. But why not let him prove – I just feel like he's never gotten a legit shot to prove that he is start point guard material for this rebuild moving forward.
Yeah, and definitely. And I know people are talking about, hey, let's trade for this player or that player. But if you're doing that, you're obviously going to have to give up assets. And to me, those assets are more critical for the Spurs than someone who they could bring in for half a season. And even though, if they brought in a superstar, obviously that's going to cost them, 2, 3 first-round picks and maybe a good young player or 2. And to me, I think I would rather hang on to those assets, because even if you do get a veteran point guard, you're not going to, you're probably not going to make the playoffs this season. And if you do, you're not going to really go anywhere. So, and yes, I know, you're building for the future, but to me, I think it makes more sense, like you're saying, let Trey see what Trey can do and kind of play out this season, let these kids kind of develop, see what you can get in the draft, see what you can get in the off season. If you do trade for someone, do in the off season where you can, use the training camp and the preseason and the first 3 games to kind of build everything. But to me, to kind of almost blow things up at midseason in a season where, it's not going well. To me, it doesn't make any sense for me to. To me, it doesn't make any sense for them to bring in a veteran point guard at this point.
And I think he would understand. Like, for example, if the Spurs were to bring in somehow like a Drew Holiday or a Mike Conley, I get that. Trey might have to be like, okay, I understand. That's Mike Conley. He's going to get the start over me. But barring that, I think he's starting quality material for this team moving forward. I know he's undersized. I get all that, but. You got Wemby, as you mentioned, he covers up for a lot of mistakes. You still got big guys with length, Devin Vassell, Sohan, that'll help on the defensive end. I just really like that calming factor that he brings onto the court. Even in just talking to him, like when the cameras are off, he's out of uniform. He and I were walking the tunnel, the Frost Center, and it was New Year's Eve. And I was like, hey, Trey, how you doing? He goes, hey, Jeff, how's it going? And I go, hey, you ready for fireworks? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to spend time with my my wife and my kid. And he was even joking, like, I'm worried about my kid if she's going to be scared. So he's really he'll talk, just down to earth and everything, not full of himself. So really, I think on and off the court, he makes a good impact for the Spurs team. But ultimately, two questions before I let you go. Do you think we're still seeing a byproduct of the Primo disaster? Because he was their point guard for the future. They invested a lot into him. I mean, a lot, from advertising to put him in it was almost like the face of the franchise. It was like right there. And do you think they're still kind of tail spinning off that?
I think so. I think that they're still tail spinning off that a little bit, maybe not as much, but I think that was their plan, and that kind of derailed in the same way that that whole Kawhi situation happened. Kind of derailed all their plans as well. So I think so. But I was just thinking about when you're talking about Trey and his size and stuff. I just got flashbacks to Avery. You remember when? When Avery was a heck of a point guard. He was a heck of a point guard, before they released him, and he's like, he did well, but they kept saying like, oh, he's too small. And so they released him. When they brought him back, he helped lead them to a NBA title. I don't know. Trey can do that. You can't do that with the roster the way it is right now. But he could definitely be a great piece for this franchise. And like you're saying, I would love to see them just, hey, you know what? This is your team for the rest of the season. Yeah. Let's see what you can do. And then at that point, at the end of the season, say, okay, well, is there someone out there better, that we can get?
Yeah. You mentioned the draft, and although there's some quality point guards coming out, but you can still see that they're raw. They got a good potential. Why not have Tre Jones being a mentor? I mean, Blake Wesley even told me recently that Tre Jones has been mentoring him now that Blake has been more on the roster, San Antonio roster, than the Austin roster. So he's taking that leadership not only on the court but in the locker room with a guy like Blake Wesley. So I think why not? I mean, let's just see what he gives us. And and
then I'm sorry, I was just also going to say that you say that in his last one of his last post game, Trey was also talking about DeJounte, about how DeJounte sort of mentored him as well. So it's sort of trickling down, like he's been a student and now he's trying to teach them, and it's that nice little Spurs pattern, where the goes from one sort of generation to the next.
Yeah, I don't think they'll go back to the Sohan thing. I mean, that's just the only reason they go back if it's an emergency, like somebody gets hurt. I
don't even think they'll do that. I think Jeremy gave it his best shot, but I mean, it's difficult to play point guard in the NBA. It's even more difficult to play point guard in the NBA when you've never played point guard your whole life. So
absolutely,
I think they've sort of
scrapped it,
gone away with that, and it's really benefited Jeremy because Jeremy's playing great now, or better now. I think if they were to decide to go away from that, maybe Blake starts, maybe maybe Malachi goes back there. But I definitely don't think you're going to see Jeremy play point guard anymore.
Probably not. Yeah, that was not a good idea. It was bad idea, Spurs. Bad idea. He is Raul Dominguez of AP Sports. Following him on X at Dominguez5. What's going on your side of things with AP Sports? Just covering the Spurs, I take it?
Yeah, and then there's UTSA has a top 25 game coming up this weekend, so I'm going to get to cover that. I always love going out to UTSA, great campus. I love what they're building out there as far as just the athletic department and the university as well. I mean, I remember when I would go cover games back in, I think it was the late or early 90s. There was nothing out there, and you see it now. And so it's tremendous to see the job that AD Campos and Coach Trailer have done out there.
Absolutely. He is Raul Dominguez. Follow him on X at Dominguez5. And maybe you can interview this guy. He may be a hot prospect up here. Look at that reach he has, man.
That'd be a heck of a point guard right there.
There's problem solved for the Spurs. They get that guy OP in it. Everybody, for those of y'all not old enough to remember this, yes, Prime actually knows how to ball. Not kidding. There's episodes of the 80s Transformers where he's balling. And even when he's doing all his computer work, not kidding. Let's see where he's rolling the ball across his shoulders. Hot prospect right there. Go find him, Raul. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, the Kens 5 Plus app, YouTube. The list goes on and on. Hey, Locked On Sports Today is a new 24/7 streaming channel only on YouTube. Go check it out. The national, the regional, the local hosts, we're all there 24/7. Locked On Sports Today. Go subscribe. So for Raul Optimus Prime Dominguez, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock in this episode of Locked On Spurs.